HR tried to fire me for misconduct. They said I falsified documents, violated policy, and ignored protocol. Everything was fabricated. Every accusation was part of a plan. But what they didn't know was this. I kept copies, the real ones. I kept emails they deleted. I kept logs they erased. And I had conversations recorded months earlier when they thought I wasn't paying attention. They tried to bury me, but they dug their own grave. And this is how it all unfolded. My name is Daniel Hayes, and the day HR tried to erase me from the company was the day I stopped playing nice. They called it misconduct. They said I'd falsified records, ignored protocol, and put the company at risk. They sat there with their printed reports and fake concern, acting like they were reluctantly doing the right thing. But they didn't know what I knew. They didn't know about the emails I'd saved on a private drive. They didn't know about the screenshots. They didn't know about the recordings on my phone. They didn't know I'd been quietly documenting their lies for months. They thought they were burying me. In reality, they were handing me the shovel. I'm 45 years old, and for 12 years, I worked as a senior compliance analyst at Redwood Dynamics in Chicago. If you've never heard of us, you've definitely felt our presence. We move things, medical supplies, pharmaceuticals, government shipments, critical inventory that can't afford to be late or mishandled. Compliance is the boring heartbeat behind all of that. I was the guy who read every line of the reports most people clicked past. The guy who double-checked signature dates. The guy who noticed when a sensor log didn't match the paperwork. I never cared about office politics. I kept my head down, did my work, and went home to my quiet apartment and my microwave dinners. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. At least that's what I thought. The first crack in that illusion showed up during an internal audit. I was cross-checking warehouse incident reports when I noticed something odd. An entire file missing from the system. The metadata said the report existed, but the document itself was gone. It wasn't a routine late shipment or a mislabeled pallet. It was a temperature excursion warning for a batch of oncology medication, chemo drugs that had to stay within a very strict range. The sensor logs showed they'd overheated for nearly 40 minutes. That kind of failure can't be fixed. Once it happens, you report it, you quarantine the product, and you follow protocol. No exceptions. But in the official compliance database, no incident, no follow-up, no explanation, just a hole. I checked the backup servers, then the mirrored archives, then the automated email notifications that are supposed to go out whenever a critical report is filed. Nothing. That's when I realized it hadn't been misplaced. Someone had deliberately deleted it. And only 4 people in the company had that level of access. The CEO, the COO, the IT director, and the HR director. Her name was Melissa Carter. Melissa was one of those people who looked like HR grew her in a lab. Expensive suit, perfect hair, empty smile. She'd mastered that corporate tone where every sentence sounds like both a compliment and a threat. I walked into her office with my laptop under my arm. "Hey Melissa," I said. "Quick question about a missing incident report." She didn't look surprised. That bothered me. "Which one?" she asked. "Temperature excursion from Building C. Oncology vials. The log shows a critical alarm, but the report's gone from the system." She clicked a few keys, pretended to search, then tilted her head. "Oh, that one. System glitch, probably. IT's been patching the archive servers. Things come and go. Sensor logs don't glitch," I said. "Only human decisions do." Her smile tightened for half a second. Then she leaned back and said, "Daniel, I know you're very thorough, but sometimes making too much noise over one little bump isn't worth the panic it causes. The shipment went out fine. Everyone's happy. Everyone, I thought, except the patient who might get a compromised drug." I left her office with more questions than answers, and a knot in my stomach that didn't go away. Over the next month, I started connecting dots. A missed forklift incident here, a safety violation there, a spill that magically became minor in the final reports, sensor data that showed alarms the paperwork didn't mention. Every time something serious happened, the paperwork got smoother, too smooth. At first, I thought maybe I was being paranoid. You work in compliance long enough, you start seeing ghosts in the spreadsheets. But then I checked the edit history on a random report. The original called for mandatory notification of a regulatory body. The final version? The entire paragraph was gone. And the last person to edit it wasn't a warehouse manager or a safety lead. It was Melissa. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a cheap frozen pizza, staring at my laptop screen long after my eyes started to blur. I knew two things. One, I couldn't unsee what I'd seen. Two, if Melissa was willing to manipulate records, she wouldn't hesitate to manipulate people. Specifically, me. So I did what any paranoid, underpaid compliance analyst with trust issues would do. I started backing everything up. Every original report that crossed my desk. Every incident log that went missing. Every email thread that suddenly went quiet. I set up a private encrypted drive at home. I mirrored my access logs. And eventually, I turned on the voice recorder on my phone before every meeting with HR. Illinois is a one-party consent state. I checked 3 times just to be sure. If they were going to play dirty, I wasn't going to show up unarmed. The trap finally snapped shut on a Friday afternoon. I was heading back to my desk with a cup of bad coffee when I saw managers from 3 different departments slipping into conference room 4B. They were carrying folders. Thick ones. The kind with tabs and sticky notes. My name was on 2 of them. I saw it as the door closed. I reached for the handle, but Melissa appeared like she'd teleported. "This one's invitation only," she said. "I'm the senior compliance analyst," I replied. "What meeting doesn't concern me?" She stepped closer, dropped her voice. "The one about you." Through the glass, I could hear muffled phrases. Non-compliance. Liability. Documentation. Build a case. Severance option. I stood there for a full minute, my heart pounding, listening to people I'd worked with for years discuss me like I was a defective piece of equipment that needed to be replaced quietly. I didn't barge in. I didn't yell. I just turned and walked back to my desk. And for the first time in 12 years, I started cleaning it out before anyone asked me to. The formal hit came the following Monday. "Daniel, HR would like to see you," my manager said, avoiding my eyes. I walked into the conference room. Melissa was sitting there with the COO and a folder thicker than a Bible. "Daniel," she began, with a fake sympathy that made my skin crawl. "We've completed a review of your recent work. Unfortunately, there are serious concerns." She slid a stack of papers toward me. Printed emails, altered logs, screenshots taken out of context. According to the documents, I had overridden compliance alerts, ignored serious violations, and tampered with internal records. It was laughable, except no one was laughing. "I didn't do any of this," I said calmly. "The documentation says otherwise," the COO replied. "And documentation is what regulators care about. They wanted me to sign a mutual separation agreement. No investigation, no appeal. Just a clean break where I quietly disappeared and they got to blame the rogue analyst if anyone looked too closely. Of course, if you refuse," Melissa added, "we'll have to terminate for cause, and that will complicate any future employment." She thought she had me cornered. She thought I was just some quiet rule follower who'd crumble under pressure. What she didn't know was that I had already printed my own stack of paperwork. I didn't pull it out yet. I wasn't ready to show my hand. Instead, I said, "I'd like some time to review this with a lawyer." The COO frowned. Melissa's smile thinned. "This offer is time-sensitive," she said. "If you bring in lawyers, we'll withdraw it." "Then withdraw it," I replied. "If you're that confident in your documentation, you shouldn't be afraid of scrutiny." Her eyes flashed. For the first time, she looked nervous. I walked out without signing a thing. That night, I opened my personal archive and went hunting. Every altered report I'd quietly saved. Every email where Melissa told someone to reframe the language. Every original versus final comparison that showed exactly what had been removed. And then there were the recordings. I had one where Melissa told a warehouse manager, "If we report every little thing, we'll drown in investigations. Just adjust the wording." call it cosmetic damage. Another where she said to the COO, as long as compliance signs off, we're covered. Daniel needs to learn to be flexible. If he won't, we'll find someone who will. And the one that sealed her fate, the one that made my hands tremble as I replayed it. Her voice, low and sharp. If an audit ever hits, we pin it on him. He's the one touching the logs. We document it his way. Paper never points back to us. They weren't just trying to push me out. They were trying to build a human shield out of my career. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared. Because I was done. Done being the quiet guy. Done cleaning up after people who cut corners. Done letting people like Melissa weaponize policy while calling it procedure. The next day, instead of going into the office, I sat at my kitchen table and made 3 calls. The first was to a whistleblower hotline for the Department of Labor. The second was to an FDA compliance line for pharmaceutical handling violations. The third was to a lawyer who specialized in employment retaliation. I didn't need revenge. I needed the truth documented somewhere they couldn't edit. I wrote a report that night. 42 pages. It read like a horror story where the monsters wore business casual. Every altered safety report. Every missing incident. Every time Melissa's name appeared in the edit trail. Every timestamp that showed violations being quietly downgraded after the fact. I attached all the audio files. All the side-by-side comparisons. Every piece of evidence Melissa never imagined I'd keep. Then I clicked send and sat back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in months, the knot in my stomach loosened. The storm hit Redwood Dynamics 10 days later. I wasn't there when the federal auditors walked in, but I heard about it from half a dozen coworkers. People in suits and badges. Conference rooms being taken over. HR offices turned inside out. They imaged hard drives. They pulled access logs. They confiscated Melissa's laptop. She tried to blame me. Of course she did. He's disgruntled. He's lying. He manipulated the files. He's trying to get back at us. Except forensic teams don't care about feelings. They care about facts. And the facts said, Melissa's login made the edits. Melissa's account deleted the reports. Melissa's emails directed managers to massage the language. Melissa's voice told people to adjust numbers to avoid fines. The COO tried to claim ignorance. The CEO tried to claim shock. Everyone suddenly developed memory problems. I didn't. A week after the audits began, I got a message from an unknown number. It was a picture. Melissa, being walked out of the building, box in her arms, security on either side. No smile, no blazer, just a ruined expression on a ruined career. I didn't save the picture. I didn't need to. 2 days later, I got a call from the pharmaceutical company whose chemo shipment had been glitched in the system. They'd read the whistleblower report. They'd seen the evidence. They'd cut ties with Redwood. And then they said something I wasn't expecting. Mr. Hayes, would you be interested in discussing a role heading our internal compliance division? While Redwood bled contracts and reputation, my inbox finally showed something other than anxiety. Opportunity. The investigation into Redwood is still ongoing. I still get updates sometimes. Regulatory bodies move slowly, but they move with weight when they finally act. As for me, I sit in a different office now. The logo on the wall is different. The paycheck is larger. The atmosphere is quieter, not because people are scared, but because people are actually doing things right. Sometimes, when I'm alone at my desk, I think about that meeting where Melissa slid lies across the table and told me no one would believe me. She was half right. Not everyone believed me, just the people who mattered. HR tried to write me out of the story. Instead, I ended up as the footnote in theirs, the one that explains why there's a new director of HR, a new compliance policy, and a permanent black mark on Redwood's record. They tried to bury me under paperwork. They forgot I'm the one who reads the fine print. And I never, ever sign anything without keeping a copy. I wasn't planning to follow Redwood's downfall. Honestly, I expected the audit to take months. Most federal investigations do. Slow, bureaucratic, painfully methodical. But Redwood wasn't a normal case. Within a week, the cracks turned into fractures. A warehouse supervisor reached out to me secretly. He said, "Daniel, the investigators aren't just asking about logs. They're asking about working conditions, route deviations, even missing shipments." I almost dropped my phone. Missing shipments? That means theft, smuggling, or internal sabotage. Whatever Melissa was hiding, it was bigger than I imagined. And then he added, "They're also asking about you, your work, your documentation. They said your records were the only ones that were consistent." That made me sit down. For years, I had been treated like an inconvenience, the guy who slowed things down with rules and procedures. Now, my annoying attention to detail was saving an entire investigation from collapsing. 3 days later, my phone buzzed again. An unfamiliar number. It was Mark Holloway, the CEO. His voice sounded like someone who hadn't slept in a week. "Daniel, we need to talk." "No, we don't," I said. "Please," he insisted. "You don't understand what's happening here." "Oh, I understand perfectly. You let HR run a cover-up operation under your nose. That's not fair," he snapped. "I trusted my team. And your team trusted lies," I said. "Which makes you either incompetent or complicit. Pick one." He went quiet. Then he tried a different angle. "What if we restructure? Bring you back? A promotion, a raise?" I hung up. Not because I was angry, because I finally realized something. Redwood never valued me. They valued what I could protect them from. The truth. I assumed I'd never hear from Melissa again. But one rainy Thursday morning at 6 a.m., I got an email from her personal Gmail. Subject line, "Please, just talk." I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. Her message was frantic, desperate. Nothing like the polished professional who once controlled an entire company with a smile. She wrote, "Daniel, I know you're angry. I know I made mistakes. But if you don't help me, I could lose everything. I have a family, a mortgage. I can't recover from this." I read it twice. Not once did she apologize for framing me, falsifying evidence, deleting federal documents, telling people I was unstable, trying to end my career. All she cared about was saving herself. I typed one sentence. "I told the truth. You should try it." And I hit send. That was the last time she ever contacted me. Months passed, and Redwood's fate was sealed. The final federal report listed record falsification, tampering with safety incident logs, failure to report medical shipment temperature deviations, employee retaliation, destruction of compliance evidence, HR misconduct, unsafe working conditions, violations of FDA chain of custody rules, and obstruction during a federal audit. Redwood Dynamics was fined millions. They lost 2 of their biggest federal contracts. Their public reputation collapsed harder than a faulty pallet rack. And buried in the report's appendix, in a footnote most people would skip, was a sentence that nearly made me laugh. Original documents provided by former employee Daniel Hayes were instrumental in reestablishing accurate timelines and uncovering inconsistencies. After everything they did to erase me, my name ended up helping define their destruction. Poetic justice. One morning in early spring, I was in my new office in Austin when someone knocked on the door. A woman wearing a black blazer stood there, Department of Labor badge clipped to her hip. She said, "Mr. Hayes? I'm Agent Rivera. Do you have a minute?" I nodded, and she sat across from me. "I was one of the lead investigators on the Redwood case," she said. "I just wanted to say something in person." My pulse quickened. I wasn't sure if she was about to thank me or warn me. She looked me straight in the eye. "Your documentation was the cleanest I've seen in 15 years. If more people did their jobs the way you did, we'd have a safer country." I didn't expect to feel emotional, but someone finally said the thing I had waited 12 years to hear, that my work mattered. Agent Rivera stood up to leave. "Oh," she added, "we also found a pattern. Redwood manipulated compliance logs for at least 7 years. Without your archive, catching it would have taken another year." After she left, I sat alone in my office, staring at my hands. For the first time in my career, I felt proud. Not because I ruined Redwood, but because I protected people who relied on the system to be honest. 2 months later, while grabbing coffee before work, I ran into someone unexpected, a former coworker from Redwood, one of the warehouse leads. He recognized me instantly. Daniel, holy man, I haven't seen you since everything went to hell. We talked for a bit. He told me Redwood shut down one of its major facilities. Layoffs everywhere. Restructuring. Executives fleeing like rats off a sinking ship. And then he said something I'll never forget. You know, the day you walked out, the whole company felt different. People said Redwood fired the wrong guy. Turns out they were right. I didn't know what to say. I never wanted to be a hero. I just wanted the truth to matter. I used to believe the worst thing that could happen at work was getting fired. I was wrong. The worst thing is staying in a place where your integrity is a threat, where doing the right thing gets you punished, where the people in power see honesty as a nuisance instead of a necessity. Redwood didn't destroy me. They freed me. They forced me out of a place that never deserved me, and into a place that finally does. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to gain anything. Melissa thought she could rewrite the story. The CEO thought he could cover it up. The executives thought I would fold. But here's the truth I learned the hard way. If you stand on the side of truth long enough, eventually the lies collapse under their own weight. Redwood tried to bury me with paperwork. Instead, those papers became their tombstone. And me? I didn't just survive. I won.